My daughter pointed at the waiter and said, "Mommy, it's Daddy." After that, everything changed. Jessica Miller took a deep breath and adjusted her blue dress as she watched her daughter Emily playing with the silverware. Celebrating her 33rd birthday at the Capitol, the most elegant restaurant in New York City, was a luxury she rarely allowed herself, but she decided today would be different. Life as a Portuguese teacher and single mother wasn't easy, but she always made sure to give the best to her 5-year-old daughter. Then suddenly, Emily stopped playing. Her bright eyes widened, fixed on a spot behind Jessica. The tall black waiter, impeccably dressed in a dark uniform, was approaching with a tray of drinks. The little girl pointed her tiny finger at him and exclaimed in a shrill voice, "Mommy, it's Daddy, the man from the picture." Silence seemed to swallow all the sounds in the restaurant as the waiter froze, letting the tray slip. The white wine glasses shattered on the marble floor. "Emily, don't point at people, it's rude." Jessica scolded her daughter automatically, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might leap out of her chest. As she turned to apologize to the waiter, she felt her blood run cold. Those eyes, she would never forget those eyes. 5 years had passed, but it was undeniable. Michael Anderson was standing right in front of her, just as shocked as she was. Jessica? Michael's deep voice came out as a whisper. Jessica grabbed Emily by the arm, tossed some bills onto the table without even checking the amount, and hurried out of the restaurant. The little girl protested, trying to break free to go back, repeatedly asking about the man from the picture, while Jessica frantically searched her purse for the car keys with trembling hands. "Mommy, why are we leaving? That was Daddy, just like in the picture Grandma showed me," Emily insisted, tears welling up in her eyes. "Don't talk nonsense, Emily. Your father is in Europe, you know that. We're going home now. It's late," Jessica replied sharply, guilt gnawing at her as she saw the disappointment in her daughter's eyes. On the drive back to their apartment in Park Slope, Jessica couldn't stop shaking. How could Michael be there? And as a waiter, the promising young man she'd met at Columbia's medical school had given up everything to serve tables at a luxury restaurant. Worse, how could Emily recognize him if she'd never seen her father before? Where had that picture come from? When they got home, Emily ran straight to her room and returned seconds later, clutching a small photo frame. Jessica felt the floor vanish beneath her feet. It was an old photo torn in half, showing a young Michael smiling under the sun. The same photo Jessica had torn up and thrown away years ago when she found out she was pregnant and alone. "Grandma Barbara gave it to me. She said it was my special secret," Emily whispered, pressing the frame to her chest. "Why did you lie, Mommy? Why did you say Daddy was far away when he's right here?" Jessica sank onto the couch, too weak to stand. How could her mother have done this? Why give Emily a photo of Michael after everything he'd done? Or rather, after everything Barbara had claimed he'd done. The next morning, Barbara arrived unannounced, flustered after receiving a call from Emily. The little girl had somehow managed to use the phone while Jessica was in the shower. When Barbara saw the photo on the coffee table, her face paled. "What is this, Mom?" Jessica confronted the 65-year-old woman who was subtly trying to slip the photo frame back into her purse. "Why did you give Emily a picture of Michael? And how did she know that man was her father if she's never seen him before?" Barbara sat down heavily, suddenly looking much older. Her time-worn hands trembled slightly. "I showed her lots of pictures. I thought she had the right to know what her father was like," confessed Barbara, avoiding her daughter's eyes. "But why? After everything you told me about him abandoning me when he found out about the pregnancy, about him running off to Europe with another woman, about the letters I sent that came back addressee unknown?" A heavy silence fell between them. Emily played in her room, unaware of the storm brewing in the living room. "The letters were never sent," Barbara finally admitted, a tear rolling down her wrinkled face. "I intercepted them. All of them." Jessica felt as if she'd been punched in the gut. "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "You deserved better, my girl. A student with no money, no family background. What could he have offered you and a child?" Barbara tried to justify, her accent thickening with emotion. When I found out you were pregnant, I thought it was my duty to protect you, to give my granddaughter a better future. You lied to me for 5 years." Jessica stood up, disbelieving. "What about Michael? Did he know about the pregnancy?" "No," Barbara lowered her head. "He called several times after that accident he had in his last year of college. I told him you'd moved on, that you were engaged to another man." Memories flooded Jessica's mind. The motorcycle accident that nearly took Michael's life during his 6th year of med school. The month he spent in the hospital, her attempts to visit him blocked by his mother, who insisted he needed space. And then the silence. The news that he'd left without saying goodbye, the discovery of her pregnancy weeks later. "How could you?" Jessica felt tears streaming down her face. "I loved him, Mum, and Emily grew up without a father because of your lies." The next day, Jessica dropped Emily off at school and automatically drove to the Capitol. She needed answers. She found Michael arriving for his morning shift, still not in full uniform. He stopped when he saw her. "I knew you'd come," he said simply. They sat at a secluded table before the restaurant opened. The silence between them weighed like lead. "Why didn't you ever look for me after the accident?" Jessica finally asked. Michael stared at her, confused. "I did, Jessica. For months. Your mother said you'd moved to Los Angeles with your fiancé, that you didn't want anything to do with me." "What fiancé? There was never any fiancé," Jessica exclaimed. "I even went to your house. Mrs. Campbell showed me an engagement ring, said you were happy moving on, that I should do the same." The revelation hit like a bomb. Her grandmother's engagement ring, which Barbara had always worn after becoming a widow, she'd used it to push Michael away. "And school? Why didn't you finish med school?" Jessica asked, eyeing his waiter's uniform. Michael sighed. "The accident affected my mobility for a while. I missed my final exams, lost my scholarship. Without you and without money, I had to work. Started as a kitchen assistant, then moved up to waiter. The owner here, Mr. Johnson, took me under his wing. I'm saving up to go back to school." "You don't know, do you?" Jessica felt a lump in her throat. "Know what?" "Emily, my daughter. Our daughter. She's 5. Michael's face changed. Shock, disbelief, then painful understanding washed over his features. "The girl at the restaurant? My daughter," his voice broke. "Is that why she recognized me? Apparently my mother showed her pictures of you, hiding it from me. All these years she made me believe you abandoned me when you found out about the pregnancy." Michael covered his face with his hands. "I have a daughter," he murmured, as if saying it aloud made it real. "A daughter I never saw being born, never saw grow up." Jessica felt her heart tighten as she saw the tears in Michael's eyes. Behind all the anger and confusion, one certainty began to take shape. They had stolen not only her love, but also Emily's right to know her father. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, the following weeks were chaotic. Mrs. Campbell, Jessica's mother-in-law, found out about the reunion through a friend who frequented the Capitol. As the matriarch of the Johnson family, she controlled the fund that covered Emily's specialized treatment for the chronic asthma she'd had since she was 2. "You will not allow that waiter near my granddaughter," Mrs. Campbell declared during an unexpected visit to Jessica's apartment. Her impeccably styled grey hair and expensive pantsuit contrasted sharply with the simple decor of the living room. "Or I may reconsider the financial support I provide for Emily's treatment." It was blatant blackmail, but Jessica felt trapped. Emily's treatment was far too expensive for a teacher's salary. Ever since Robert, Mrs. Campbell's son and Emily's legally registered father, had died in a car accident 3 years earlier, her mother-in-law had maintained financial support, but with tight strings attached. Robert wasn't Emily's biological father, Jessica finally confessed, tired of living a lie. "We met when I was already pregnant." He knew. Mrs. Campbell paled. "Impossible. My son would never raise another man's child." "He did. We fell in love," he proposed, "and he wanted to register Emily as his own. The thing is, the real father never knew about the pregnancy. Until now." The revelation seemed to age Mrs. Campbell by 10 years in an instant. "Are you telling me my granddaughter isn't my granddaughter?" Jessica sat beside the older woman, taking her hands in hers. "Genetically, no, but Emily loved Robert as her father. He was the only father she knew until we ran into Michael by chance, and you'll always be her grandma, the one she lovingly calls Grandma Campbell. That doesn't have to change." But Mrs. Campbell was unmoved. She threatened to cut off all financial support if Jessica allowed Michael near the girl. Pressured and afraid, Jessica reluctantly agreed to keep her distance, despite the emptiness she felt and Emily's constant questions about the daddy from the restaurant. As the weeks passed, Emily developed a persistent cough. She refused to take her medicine and kept asking about Michael. During a routine checkup, Dr. Williams, the pediatric pulmonologist who had treated Emily since infancy, expressed concern. "The tests show her respiratory condition has worsened, but I can't find a physical cause," the doctor explained, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the charts. "How has she been emotionally? Any changes at school? At home?" Jessica hesitated before answering. "She met her biological father. By chance, but we're not allowing contact between them." Dr. Williams peered at her over her glasses. "And how has Emily reacted?" "She won't stop asking about him. She's been crying more, acting out, refusing to go to school." "Jessica, I've been a doctor for 30 years and I can tell you with certainty, a child's emotional state directly affects their physical health, especially with conditions like asthma. Stress could be making her condition worse." Those words weighed on Jessica's conscience the whole way home. On the drive, they passed the Capitol. Emily immediately pressed her face against the car window, her eyes scanning the place for Michael. "Is he there, Mommy?" she asked hopefully. Jessica's heart ached. Who was she really protecting? Emily? Or was she just giving in to Mrs. Campbell's manipulations and her own mother's lies? That night, as she sorted through the old memory chest, Jessica found a small jewelry box that had belonged to her grandmother. When she opened it, she discovered a false bottom, and there, carefully folded, were all the letters Michael had sent after the accident. Letters her mother had intercepted, letters full of love and explanations about the accident that had temporarily taken him away. Sitting on her bedroom floor, Jessica read each one, tears streaming freely down her face. In one of them, dated 3 months after the accident, Michael had written, "If we ever have children, I'll tell them how their mother was the light." That guided me back during the darkest moments of my recovery. The irony of those words made Jessica sob loudly. They had a daughter who was suffering because she couldn't know her father. Michael, determined to meet Emily, enrolled in children's storytelling classes at the Cultural Center, near the school where Jessica worked and Emily attended. He'd found the place through a quick online search. After a few weeks, he secured an invitation for a special performance in the square outside the school. During recess, Emily slipped away from her teacher's aide and ran to the small audience gathering around the storyteller. Her eyes lit up when she recognized Michael. "It's you, the daddy from the restaurant," she exclaimed, rushing toward him. Michael froze for a moment, too overwhelmed to react. Then, with a gentle smile, he invited Emily to sit on one of the little benches. "Hello, little one. Do you like stories?" he asked, trying to keep his composure despite the tears threatening to fall. "I do. Mommy reads to me every night, but she's been really sad lately." "Sad? Why?" "Ever since we saw you at the restaurant. She cries in her room, and Grandma Campbell is angry and Grandma Barbara is quiet," Emily explained with the brutal honesty of children. "It's all really confusing." Michael felt the weight of the situation, but before he could respond, he heard Jessica calling urgently for Emily. Turning, he saw the woman who had never left his heart running toward them, her face a mix of relief at finding her daughter and apprehension at seeing her with Michael. "Emily, you can't just run off like that," Jessica scolded, but her voice faltered when she met Michael's gaze. To both their surprise, instead of pulling them apart, Jessica sat on the bench beside them, took a deep breath, and said, Maybe it's time for you two to really get to know each other." At that moment, the little square became the stage for a reconciliation that had begun 5 years earlier. Michael told stories, not just for the small audience that had gathered, but especially for his daughter, who laughed and participated eagerly. Jessica watched, her heart warming at the instant connection between father and daughter, as if the blood they shared sang in recognition. By the end of the performance, when the other children had left with their parents, the three of them remained seated, talking like a family that had only been temporarily separated, not like strangers meeting for the first time. That was when Mrs. Campbell appeared unexpectedly, dragging her cane forcefully against the square's stone pavement. "So this is how you honor our conditions, Jessica," the old woman shouted, pointing her cane at Michael. "Bringing this intruder close to my granddaughter?" Emily shrank against Michael, frightened by her grandmother's outburst. The gesture didn't go unnoticed and seemed to infuriate the older woman even more. "Mrs. Campbell, please," Jessica tried to intervene. Emily was just watching a storytelling performance. "With the man you swore to keep away from her, the man who wants to take my Robert's place." That's when, in front of everyone present, Mrs. Campbell revealed the truth she had been holding back. "You think I don't know why my son was interested in a pregnant, unmarried teacher? Robert was always like that, trying to save others, just like his father, just like—" She looked at Michael with a mix of fury and pain, then stopped abruptly. "Just like who, Mrs. Campbell?" Michael asked, sensing there was more to the story. The elderly woman let out a stifled sob before answering. "Just like the first husband I had before Robert's father. A man who left me 2 months pregnant to be with another woman. A man you physically resemble every time I look at you." The revelation hit like a bombshell. Mrs. Campbell didn't hate Michael for being Emily's biological father. She hated him because, unconsciously, he made her relive a past trauma, a wound that had never fully healed. Barbara, who had arrived in the middle of the argument, watched everything with guilt written all over her face. The silent alliance between the two grandmothers to keep Michael at a distance was starting to make sense. Both were projecting onto Michael their own traumas and disappointments with men from their past. "I'm not that man who abandoned you, Mrs. Campbell," Michael said firmly but without hostility. "Just like I'm not the man Mrs. Barbara painted for Jessica. I'm just someone who was denied the right to know his own daughter for 5 years." Emily, still clinging to Michael's hand, looked at her grandmother with confused, teary eyes. "Grandma Campbell, why are you yelling at my other daddy? Daddy Robert already went to heaven, but Mommy said I can have 2 daddies, one in heaven and one here." The innocent wisdom of the child silenced everyone. Mrs. Campbell looked at her granddaughter with watery eyes, suddenly appearing much smaller and more fragile. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. After the confrontation in the square, things began to change, gradually. Mr. Thompson, owner of the Capitol and a silent witness to recent events, called Michael into his office for a talk. "How you know I was a professor at the medical school before dedicating myself to gastronomy, right?" the gray-haired man asked, pouring 2 cups of coffee. Michael nodded, surprised by the revelation. "What you don't know is that I recognized you the moment you walked in asking for a job 3 years ago. You were a student of my friend Dr. Richard Harper. He spoke very highly of you, said you'd be an excellent surgeon." Michael felt a lump in his throat as he remembered his interrupted dreams. "Life took a different turn, Mr. Thompson. Life always takes different turns, young man. The question is whether we have the courage to reclaim it when given the chance." The man smiled, sliding an envelope across the table. "Open it." Inside, the envelope was a letter from Columbia's medical school, offering Michael the opportunity to complete his degree with a special scholarship for students who had to interrupt their studies due to financial hardship. "How?" Michael looked at his employer in disbelief. "I have my connections and I've watched your dedication all these years. You deserve this chance, especially now that you have a daughter." For the first time in years, Michael allowed himself to dream again of the white coat, of finally becoming the doctor he had always wanted to be. Meanwhile, Emily began showing surprising improvement in her respiratory condition. Dr. Williams, examining the girl at her next appointment, couldn't hide her surprise. "The test results are significantly better. What changed at home?" Emily, sitting on the exam table swinging her little legs, answered before Jessica could. "Now I have my other daddy. He tells stories in the square and is going to be a doctor just like you." The doctor looked at Jessica with a raised eyebrow, a knowing smile on her lips. "It seems we've found the best medicine for this young lady," she remarked. "Emotional balance works wonders for the immune system." Jessica couldn't help but notice how Emily seemed to blossom since Michael had come into their lives. The persistent cough had lessened, she was sleeping through the night again, and her appetite had improved considerably. As a doctor, how could she argue against that? Barbara and Mrs. Campbell, despite their initial resistance, had begun to see the benefits Michael's presence brought to Emily. One Sunday afternoon, as everyone gathered for lunch at Jessica's house, Barbara finally mustered the courage to do what she should have done years ago. "Michael, I need to ask for your forgiveness," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "What I did was inexcusable. I kept you away from my daughter and granddaughter out of pure prejudice and fear." Silence filled the room. Michael looked at the woman who had caused him so much pain, but instead of anger, he felt only compassion. "Mrs. Barbara, I understand you were just trying to protect your daughter. I won't say it didn't hurt or that I don't think about the lost years." He glanced at Emily, who was playing, oblivious to the seriousness of the conversation. "But looking forward is what matters now." Barbara wiped a tear and then revealed, "I have a savings account. I started setting money aside for you years ago when I realized my mistake. It's not much, but it could help cover your return to college." She hesitated, her trembling hands adjusting the antique brooch on her blouse, a gesture Jessica knew. "Well, her mother always did that when she needed to confess something difficult. I need you to know everything, Michael. When you had your accident, I went to the hospital in secret. I saw how badly you were hurt, heard the doctors talking about how you might never regain precise movement in your hands." Barbara's voice faltered. "My husband, Jessica's father, was a surgeon. He lost his motor coordination at 50 and was never the same. Seeing you in that hospital bed took me back to the past, to the suffering I endured beside him. It was like I was protecting my daughter from reliving my story." Michael absorbed this with surprise. Jessica had never mentioned. Her father was a doctor, let alone the circumstances of his departure from the profession. "Why didn't you ever tell me this, Mom?" Jessica asked, equally stunned. "Because I chose to bury that pain, to pretend our move to New York City was just for better opportunities, not because we were fleeing the pitying looks in our small hometown after your father lost everything he loved." Barbara took a deep breath. "When I saw Michael in that hospital bed, all my fear came rushing back. It wasn't just prejudice or control. It was terror at the thought of you going through what I did." The silence that followed was filled with deeper understanding. It didn't justify the lies, but it humanized Barbara's choices. Mrs. Campbell, who had been quietly observing, cleared her throat to get their attention. "And I have a house in Robert's name that I never sold. I'll transfer it to Emily as a form of reparation. That girl deserves security, no matter who her biological father is." She smoothed the expensive fabric of her skirt, searching for the right words. "Robert knew you were special from the very beginning, Jessica. He came home after meeting you and said, 'Mom, I found a woman who makes me want to be a better person.'" Mrs. Campbell's eyes welled up at the memory. "When he told me you were pregnant with another man's child, I was furious. I tried to push him away, but he said something I'll never forget. Sometimes love is about accepting the past of the person you love and helping them build their future." Jessica covered her mouth with her hands, overcome with emotion. That sounded exactly like something Robert would say. He loved Emily even before she was born. The first time he felt her kick in his belly, he cried. A man nearly 30 years old weeping like a child. The elderly woman smiled at the memory. "That's why I kept helping after he was gone. It wasn't just duty, it was respect for the love my son felt." Jessica watched everything with her, heart racing. Was this really happening? The two women who had interfered so much in her life were finally letting her and Emily be happy with Michael. More than that, they were revealing layers of their own stories that explained, even if they didn't fully justify their past actions. The following months were about adjustment. Michael received an offer to work as an administrative assistant at the Metropolitan Medical Center while finishing his studies. The flexible schedule allowed him to spend more time with Emily, picking her up from school twice a week and helping with homework. The first time Michael picked up Emily alone was a nerve-wracking moment for everyone. Jessica spent the morning texting, worried whether he'd know how to handle the girl's asthma if she had an attack. Emily, on the other hand, was radiant, showing off her doctor dad to her classmates. On their way out, the school coordinator, Mrs. Peterson, a woman in her 70s who had worked there for over 3 decades, discreetly called Michael aside. "Emily's been a different child since you came into her life, you know," the woman remarked, adjusting her colorful glasses. "I remember when Jessica first arrived here, pregnant and alone. I saw Robert enter their lives, and I saw when he left. And now I see the family coming together again. It's like a puzzle, finally finding all its pieces." Michael felt the weight of those words. There was so much of his daughter's life he didn't know, so many lost moments. "I have a lot to make up for," he replied, watching Emily run toward him. "It's not about making up for anything, young man," the wise educator smiled. "It's about being present now. The past is gone. What matters is the future you're building with them." That conversation stayed with Michael. He realized he couldn't recover the lost years, but he could make every new day count. At home, while helping Emily with her math homework, he created little games to make learning easier, turning abstract numbers into stories about princesses and dragons. Jessica, watching from the kitchen doorway, felt her heart warm at the natural bond between father and daughter. "You've always had a way with kids," she remarked after Emily went to bed. "Remember when we tutored the children of the university hospital staff?" Michael smiled at the memory. "You always said I explained things better than their teachers." And it was true. Jessica moved closer, sitting beside him on the couch. "You have a natural patience, an ability to see the world through their eyes." "It's strange," Michael reflected. "I spent so much time focused on myself, on what I'd lost, on my interrupted career. And now all I can think about is what I can give Emily, how I can help her grow up happy and secure." "That's called being a father," Jessica said, softly, kissing him. In the mature man before her, Jessica rediscovered the same Michael she had fallen for years ago. Their youthful passion had given way to a deeper feeling, built on the scars and lessons life had given them. They began to reconnect slowly, with the caution of those who had known the pain of separation. Emily flourished. Her respiratory condition improved so much that her doctor visits went from monthly to quarterly. At school, her drawings always included 4 figures, herself in the center, Jessica and Michael by her side, and a small figure in the sky, representing Robert, the daddy star, as she affectionately called him. One afternoon, while playing at the playground near Michael's building, Emily found a trembling, skinny, abandoned puppy. With tears in her eyes, she begged her father to take him home. "But we live in an apartment, sweetheart, and your asthma," Michael tried to explain, worried about his daughter's health. "But he's all alone, Dad, just like you." "Were just like I was without you," the little girl argued, her big eyes pleading. "We can't leave him without a family." Those simple words struck Michael deeply. Emily, in her innocence, had drawn a connection between the puppy's abandonment and their years of separation. "Let's take him to the vet first," he relented, unable to resist his daughter's emotional plea. "Then we'll talk to your mum." The vet confirmed the dog, a light-colored mutt, was malnourished but had no serious illnesses. Michael took photos and posted them in adoption groups, explaining to Emily that they needed to find the right home for him. When Jessica arrived to pick up Emily, the girl ran to tell her about the puppy whom she'd named Star, in honor of Daddy Robert. "He needs us, Mom, please," she begged. Jessica looked at Michael, who shrugged with an apologetic smile. "I couldn't say no. She said he was alone, just like I was without you," he explained quietly. Jessica felt the weight of those words. After consulting Dr. Williams, who assured them a well-groomed, clean pet wouldn't worsen Emily's controlled asthma, they decided to adopt the dog on the condition he'd stay mostly at their new house, which had a yard, and only visit the apartment occasionally. Star became part of the family, a living symbol of their resilience and adaptability. The once abandoned, frail pup grew healthy and energetic, following Emily everywhere like a loyal guardian. Barbara and Mrs. Campbell, once rivals united only by their desire to control Jessica's life, developed an unlikely friendship built on their shared love for Emily. The house to be transferred to the girl's name was being renovated, and the two grandmothers spent hours debating wall colors and curtain styles, a partnership no one could have predicted. Their transformation was remarkable. Barbara, who had always been controlling and anxious, now displayed a serenity that even surprised her daughter. One afternoon, while sorting old photos for a family album they were making for Emily, she explained what had changed. "I spent my life trying to protect you from the same mistakes I made, only to make worse ones," she confessed to Jessica. "Now I understand I can't control everything. It's freeing, you know, accepting that life has its own plans." Mrs. Campbell, always so rigid and formal, found in Barbara's company a lightness she'd never allowed herself. "You know what amazes me most about you?" she asked Barbara as they picked plants for the new house's garden. "How you find joy in simple things. I think I forgot how to do that long ago." The two women, each in their own way, began healing old wounds through the second chance life had given them with Emily. One evening, as they strolled down Fifth Avenue after a family movie night, Emily ran ahead, chasing pigeons. Michael took Jessica's hand, stopping her under the colorful lights of a building. "I never stopped loving you," he confessed, his eyes shining with the same intensity as when they first met. "Even when I thought you'd moved on, even when I believed you'd forgotten me." Jessica felt the tears well up. "I never forgot you either. Even in Robert's arms, even trying to build another life, your face always appeared in Emily's. She has your eyes, you know." Michael smiled, moved. "I think I always knew we'd meet again. I just didn't imagine it would be through her." Jessica bit her lower lip, hesitating before asking the question that had haunted her for weeks. "Do you resent the time with Robert? That he was her father in those early years?" Michael looked at Emily, who was now crouching to watch a tiny bug on the ground. "At first I was jealous," he admitted honestly. "I pictured him witnessing her first steps, her first words." His voice faltered for a moment. "But then I realized something. He loved her when he had no obligation to. He chose to be her father, even knowing he wasn't the biological one. How could I resent a man like that?" Jessica nodded, tears now flowing freely. "He was a good man, kind, patient. Emily was obsessed with Cinderella stories, and he read the same one every night without ever complaining." She smiled at the memory. When he found out about the cancer already advanced, his biggest worry was how Emily would grow up without him. It was the first time Jessica had explicitly mentioned the cause of Robert's death. Michael squeezed her hand in solidarity. "He left letters for her, one for every birthday until she turns 18, Jessica continued. "I think you should read them too, to know the man who cared for her when we couldn't be together." Michael felt a lump in his throat. How many layers of pain and love were in this story, he was only now fully understanding. "I'd like that very much," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. When Emily came running back to them, Michael crouched to her level and asked, "Emily, how would you feel if Daddy Michael lived closer to you and Mommy?" The little girl's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Like in our house?" Michael and Jessica exchanged surprised glances and laughed at their daughter's frankness. "Well, maybe one day," Michael answered carefully. "But for now I was thinking of living in the same building." "Yay, then you can take me to school every day and read bedtime stories." Emily's spontaneity melted away any lingering tension. There under the city lights, they finally looked like a complete family. On the way back, they stopped at an ice cream shop. Emily, her face smeared with chocolate, abruptly asked, "Daddy, why don't you have other kids?" The question caught Michael off guard. "Well, I never found the right person after your mum," he answered truthfully. "And I didn't know I had you." "But now you do," the girl concluded with childlike logic. "And you have Mommy again. You could give me a little brother." Jessica choked on her ice cream while Michael tried to hide the blush creeping up his face. "Emily, you don't ask for things like that," Jessica scolded, still coughing. "Why not? Madison in my class got a little brother, and Aunt Sarah from the corner store is expecting a baby." Star could have a little friend too, Emily continued, completely oblivious to the adult's discomfort. Michael and Jessica exchanged glances over their daughter's head. It was undeniable that the idea of expanding their family had crossed both their minds, but neither had dared to say it aloud. Now, thanks to Emily's disarming honesty, the topic was on the table. "I think we need time, Emily," Michael said diplomatically. "First, we need to get used to being a family. Then we can think about making it bigger, okay?" "Okay," the girl agreed, already distracted by a new scoop of ice cream. "But don't take too long, all right? I want to be a big sister before I get too big." On the way home, while Emily dozed off in the back seat of the car, Jessica and Michael sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the future, a future that, after so many detours, finally seemed promising and shared. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 6 months later, Michael managed to complete his penultimate semester of medical school with exemplary grades. His life experience and maturity made him an even better student than he had been in his youth. To celebrate, he decided to take Jessica and Emily out to dinner at the same restaurant where it all began. The Capitol was decorated for a special evening. Mr. Thompson personally welcomed the small family, leading them to the best table with a view of the illuminated gardens. "Tonight, you're my special guests," declared the owner with a knowing smile at Michael. Emily, wearing her favorite floral dress, looked around with wide-eyed wonder. "Look, Mommy, this is where Daddy worked when we found him." Jessica smiled, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Yes, sweetheart. This is where our story started over." The dinner unfolded with laughter and memories. Michael told Emily stories, from the time he and Jessica met in college. Jessica filled in details he'd forgotten, weaving a tale that enchanted the little girl. "And then in the anatomy lab, your mom knocked over a jar of formaldehyde, and we had to evacuate the whole building," Michael recounted as Emily burst into giggles. "It wasn't my fault. You scared me, sneaking up behind that anatomical model," Jessica protested, giving his arm a playful tap. Emily absorbed every word, every gesture, as if filling a memory album she'd never had the chance to create. By dessert, Michael gave a discreet signal to Mr. Thompson, who approached, carrying a small velvet box. "Emily, can you help me with something very important?" Michael asked, kneeling beside her chair. The girl nodded eagerly, always ready to help. "I want to know what you think of this gift for your mom." He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring with a single blue stone, the color of Jessica's and Emily's eyes. The little girl's eyes widened. "It's beautiful, Daddy. It looks like a star." "It's a promise ring," Michael explained. "To show I want to stay with you and your mom forever. What do you think?" Emily clapped her hands in excitement. "Yes, yes, Mommy, say yes." She turned to Jessica, who watched the scene with tear-filled eyes. Michael then turned to Jessica, still on one knee. "We lost 5 years, but we have a whole lifetime ahead. I know we're still getting to know each other again, that there's so much to rebuild, but I want to do it by your side. By both of your sides." Jessica looked at her daughter, at Michael, at the restaurant where fate had brought them back together. Tears now streamed freely down her face. "Yes," she answered, her voice trembling. 1,000 times yes." The entire restaurant applauded as Michael slipped the ring onto Jessica's finger, and Emily jumped from her chair to hug them both. Among the guests, to the couple's surprise, were Barbara and Mrs. Campbell, who had been tipped off by Mr. Thompson about the night's surprise. The two grandmothers approached, moved. Barbara hugged her daughter and future son-in-law with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for forgiving me," she whispered. "Seeing you together is the greatest proof that true love always finds a way." Mrs. Campbell, more reserved but equally emotional, handed the couple an envelope. The deed to the house already in Emily's name, as I promised, and one more gift. She hesitated, her voice breaking. "Robert left a letter to be given to Emily when she turned 18, but I think you, as her parents, should read it first." The letter, written by Robert months before the accident that took his life, revealed that he had always known that Emily's biological father might one day appear. "If that happens," he had written, "I hope he is a good man. who loves our little girl as much as I do. Emily deserves to have all the fathers in the world loving her, caring for her. Never feel guilty, Jessica, for letting her know her roots. Love doesn't shrink when it's shared, it multiplies. Those words, coming from the man who had accepted and loved Emily as his own, gave Jessica and Michael the peace they needed to move forward without guilt or regrets. The wedding took place 6 months later, a simple ceremony in the garden of their new home. Emily, wearing a light blue dress and a flower crown, was the flower girl, carrying the rings with solemn responsibility. Michael, now in his final semester of medical school, and Jessica, recently promoted to school curriculum coordinator, exchanged vows under a floral arch, surrounded only by the most important people in their lives. "I promise never to let lies or misunderstandings come between us again," Michael declared, sliding the ring onto Jessica's finger. "I promise to be the best father to Emily and the best partner to you every day of our lives. I promise to trust in our love and fight for it no matter what," Jessica replied, tears of happiness blurring her vision. "I promise to build with you and Emily the family we've always dreamed of." At the end of the ceremony, Emily surprised everyone by asking to say a few words. With the confidence of a child who feels utterly loved, she said, "I knew Daddy Michael was my real daddy when I saw him at the restaurant. I had his picture under my pillow and asked every day for him to find me. And it worked," she smiled, revealing her innocent belief in the power of her wishes. "Now I have two daddies, my star daddy who watches over me from above, and Daddy Michael who tells me stories here. I'm the luckiest girl in the world." There wasn't a dry eye at the ceremony after the little girl's words. Michael scooped her up, holding her with all the love he had stored during the years he hadn't known she existed. "I'm the lucky one to have you, Princess," he whispered, kissing his daughter's forehead. Barbara and Mrs. Campbell, now inseparable friends despite their differences, watched the scene side by side. The transformation in both was visible. Regret for past manipulations had given way to a sincere commitment to support the new family's happiness. "They deserve this, don't they?" Barbara remarked, dabbing a tear. "They deserve so much more," Mrs. Campbell replied, her gaze softened by time and understanding. "And we'll do our part to make sure they have it." That night, after the guests had left and Emily finally fell asleep, exhausted from the day's emotions, Jessica and Michael sat on the porch of their home, watching the stars dotting the New York City sky, rarely visible through the pollution. "Do you believe in fate?" Jessica asked, leaning against her husband's chest. Michael thought for a moment, stroking her hair. "I believe some people are meant to find each other, no matter how long it takes or how many obstacles stand in the way," he answered. "Like us." "Like us," she agreed, tilting her face up to kiss him. There, under the starry sky, they finally felt the circle close. The lies of the past could no longer separate them, and the future, once so uncertain, now stretched before them like a lighted path, ready to be walked together. The next morning, as they prepared breakfast, the phone rang. It was the Metropolitan Medical Center, offering Michael a pediatric residency position as soon as he completed his course. 3 months from then, Emily, still in her pajamas, was sitting at the table drawing when she heard the news. Her little face lit up with a smile. "Does that mean you're going to be a children's doctor just like me, Daddy?" "Yes, Princess," Michael replied, emotional. "And do you know why I chose pediatrics?" The girl shook her head, curious. "Because you taught me that nothing is more important than taking care of little ones, making sure they grow up healthy and happy," he explained, sitting beside her. "You made me a better doctor before I even put the white coat back on." Jessica watched the scene with her heart overflowing with love. Life had taken so many turns, thrown so many challenges, but finally they were where they were meant to be, as a family. 2 years passed. Michael graduated top of his class and was already in his 2nd year of pediatric residency. Jessica had been invited to develop an educational program for children with respiratory difficulties at the Metropolitan Medical Center, inspired by Emily's experience. The girl's condition was completely under control. Dr. Williams had even reduced her medication, attributing the significant improvement not just to medical treatment but mostly to their stable and loving family environment. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, the whole family was gathered for a barbecue in the backyard. Emily, now 7, ran around the garden with her cousins, the children of Michael and Jessica's friends. Barbara set the table while Mrs. Campbell supervised the barbecue, giving precise instructions about how the meat should be cooked. Michael walked up to Jessica, who was watching the scene with a smile. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, hugging her from behind. "About how much has changed since that day at the restaurant," she replied, leaning into him. "Who would have thought a simple comment from a child could change so many lives?" "Mom, it's Dad," Michael quoted the words that had changed his. Destiny, spoken by the daughter he hadn't known he had. "The 5 most important words of my life." Jessica turned to face him, a slight hesitation in her eyes. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her, still flat stomach. "In a few months, Emily is going to have a little brother or sister." Michael's eyes widened, then filled with tears. He hugged Jessica tightly, lifting her off the ground in a burst of joy. "This time, I'll be by your side from the very first moment," he promised, kissing her tenderly. Emily, noticing the commotion, ran over to them. "What happened? Why is Daddy crying?" Jessica knelt to meet her daughter's height. "They're happy tears, sweetheart. Daddy is so happy because soon you'll have a little sibling." The girl's eyes sparkled with excitement. "A baby? Really?" She placed her little hand on her mother's belly. "Is it already in there?" "Yes, still very tiny," Jessica explained, smiling. Emily looked seriously at her mother's stomach, then at her father, and declared with the wisdom only children possess, "This baby is so lucky. They're going to have the best daddy in the world from the very beginning." Michael scooped his daughter into his arms, hugging her along with Jessica, forming a perfect circle around the new life growing inside. "And the best big sister too," he added, kissing the girl's cheek. On the other side of the garden, Barbara and Mrs. Campbell watched the scene, exchanging emotional glances. The grandmothers, once rivals united by their misguided desire for control, were now partners in their mission to support and love unconditionally. "We made a lot of mistakes," Barbara murmured. "But they knew how to fix everything," Mrs. Campbell added. "That's what matters in the end." In the center of the garden, Michael, Jessica, and Emily remained embraced, a perfect portrait of what happens when truth and love finally triumph over lies and manipulation. Little Emily, who once pointed to a waiter and said, "Mom, it's Dad," could never have imagined how that simple gesture would change so many destinies, reuniting a family that should never have been torn apart. Life, with its unexpected twists, sometimes leads us exactly where we're meant to be, and for Jessica, Michael, and Emily, that was exactly the right place. Together, at last. The end of the story. Dear listener, have you ever experienced a reunion that changed your life? Share your story with us in the comments. Was it fate or coincidence that brought this family together? Leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories that touch the soul.